Mr. Bennett, may I call you Alex?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's a pleasure talking with you. My name is Mike Shiloh, and we're going to be on the air here on FM News Channel 97.5 in Houston, and I know you're on Sirius now. Can you tell us what it's like?
What it's like?
Yes, what's it like? National, big-time radio, huh?
Well, no, it's radio heaven.
Yes.
Understand? Because if we were, as a radio guy, you should know this too. If we were to die and go to radio heaven, there would be two priorities in radio heaven: no FCC, right?
Right.
And no ratings. So those two things being true, it's radio heaven.
Are you playing music, or is this pure Alex Bennett?
Pure Alex Bennett.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so all we got to do is get serious.
It's very simple. We're on Sirius Left 146.
And what time are you on?
I'm on from New York time. It's 9 to noon, and I guess in Houston time it'd be 1957.
Well, are you broadcasting from New York, or are you in San Francisco?
Yeah, broadcasting from New York. Yeah.
Ah, yes.
I used to work in Houston years ago.
I know you did. I wanted to see if I could jog your memory a little bit about that, because as I recall, you started off here as James Bond on 610 AM.
Yes, with a license to KILT, KILT. Yeah, I did that for about how long was that British guy? About 2 years there as a British guy.
Yeah.
I wasn't British at all, but I auditioned for the job saying I was British, and when they found out I wasn't, they said, well, can you hide it from everybody else? And I said, what does that mean? He said that you can't tell anybody you aren't British. I said, how about my friends? He said, you can't tell your friends you're not British. So my wife and I moved to Houston, and everybody thought I was British. And when we would get together with friends, I'd have to talk in a British accent. Yeah, well, it drove me nuts after a while, and slowly I decided I'd slowly lose my accent so that I wouldn't have to do it anymore. So, because if you're here for a while, I guess you lose your accent, right?
Well, sure.
And about 2 years later, I completely lost the accent, and people would come up to me and say, do you know you're losing your accent a little? Or like, y'all know you're losing your accent a little.
Don't y'all? Yeah. It was your boss was Dickie Rosenfeld, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's an oldie but goodie.
Hey, partner, a lot of us worked for him, and we all remember him.
Dickie was a wild man.
Wasn't he, though? Was he the guy who put you on the air as James Bond?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was. Yeah.
He passed away a few years ago, but we all remember him so well.
Oh, God, he was the best.
He sure was.
But what's funny? The station was owned by a guy by the name of Gordon McClendon. It was a radio legend. I mean, this is the guy who invented Top 40. He invented good music formats, all news formats. He was an amazing radio guy, but he also ran the place like you were in the world's worst. I almost felt like I was in Guantanamo.
Yeah.
I mean, he ruled by fear, but man, did you learn the business working for this guy.
Oh, I guarantee you. And you did a lot of show prep for the James Bond show, didn't you?
I never do show prep. Are you kidding me?
Oh.
I'm so lazy, it's ridiculous. The only reason I went to radio is because I'm too lazy to work at anything else.
I was wondering about the bit that you did every day or most days in the early days of the James Bond show, the Just Plain Juanita show. You remember that?
Well, that was actually a bit that I stole from a guy by the name of Don Sherwood in San Francisco, who was my idol.
Oh, yes.
But the thing I didn't steal that I used to do was Little Annie Leibovitz.
That's right.
Which was a daily comic strip I supposedly read. That I had to prep for.
I
haven't done it since because it takes work.
Yeah, you had the jingle from the original radio show, Little Orphan Annie. At the very end, you'd sing, "It's Little Orphan Leibovitz."
Yeah, right.
Excellent. The reason why I asked that is because if I remember correctly...
you remember this stuff. How old are you?
Absolutely, and I'm only 28. It's just amazing. It hasn't been that long since you were
yeah,
here.
Right.
Yeah, no, I remember. Because I went through KILT, back in 19 bada boom. So we all worked there. And, yeah.
So you listened to the show through your mother's womb, did you?
No. I remember it well. But Just Plain Juanita, the concept was that you would put on a record of Spanish, learn how to learn Spanish, and then you would translate it, but not literally. You were translating it as though it sounded like the words that were being spoken.
Well, like broadcast La Hora would be, how's your girlfriend?
Exactly. Yes. Great idea for
Well,
a bit.
that wasn't my idea. That was an idea of a guy by the name of Don Sherwood, who ran a show in San Francisco and was, I think, the consummate radio personality. I mean, literally owned the town, and was just a great radio personality with great ideas, you know. And I stole that from him, because in the early days you steal a little bit. You know?
Yeah, we all do, sure.
And then as you get along in your career, you steal a lot, but
Yeah.
then you can steal a little.
Well, I know Dickie once told me that he said you approached him and wanted to do this talk show, and the Alex Bennett name came up, and he said, "Man, go for it."
Yeah, well, what happened was that they decided they wanted to do a controversial talk show. And I said to them, I want it. And they said, well, you really can't have it because you're doing so well in the morning. Because I was getting great ratings for them in the morning. And I said, well, I'll quit if you don't give it to me. So you got a choice. And they said, okay. And they put me on at night and let me do this talk show. And I had to come up with a new name. And my first real name is Bennett. My father's first name was Alex. So there was the Alex Bennett.
And you kept it ever since, huh?
Yep.
Well, as far as that show goes, though, I mean, was that an original concept with you? There were controversial shows, but none in Houston.
Well, no, this was actually the idea of Gordon McClendon. And he did it with me in Houston. He did it in several other towns. And the idea was to have somebody go on the air and just be in your face. In fact, they billed me as the man you love to hate.
Right.
And the idea was just to be in your face all the time. And since it was on a rock station with a lot of kids listening, I was supposed to hang up on every kid that called.
Yeah, you're too young. You know? I remember that.
And the ratings were amazing. I think 1 in every 4 radios in Houston was listening to us at that point.
It went on for several years, didn't it?
Well, I think for about a year and a half, something like that.
Oh, well, tell me more about the show, though. I mean, it was essentially you would have guests and you would take calls. Sometimes you would just take calls. This sounds like something way ahead of its time.
But, you know, in those days, it was the beginning of talk radio. I mean, there were people doing it. There were people like in L.A., Joe Pine, for instance, who had been doing talk shows. There had been talk shows around. There weren't all talk stations, for instance. They were usually talk shows on a music station or on, some other kind of station, some other formats, and then they would have one guy doing a talk show.
Yeah, so, I guess that's probably more like
it was sporadic. It wasn't like everybody was doing talk shows like today.
Well, we're talking with Alex Bennett now. He's got a new show on Sirius, on satellite radio Sirius. Having been in Houston, you understand Houston, and I'm sure you had a lot of fun with some of the callers. Did you see that movie, Talk Radio?
Yeah.
I'm sure some similarities in
that. They gave the audience good ideas. If you don't like the guy, go shoot him.
Well, I'm talking about the guests, though, and so forth. It kind of reminded me of the old Alex Bennett show a little bit. The guy was really in your face.
Yeah. You say my new show on Sirius. Actually, I've been on Sirius for 2 years now.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Well, then I'll cut that out because we're on tape.
No, let's don't have to cut it out. We only. But I've been out there here for 2 years now. I've seen this company. When I first went there, I think we had 3 people as subscribers, and now we're up over 4 million. So it's getting to the point. I used to have to wait like 3 days for a phone call, and now it's all the lines are lit, and it's great.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's building the future, really.
Well, it is, and in the case of Sirius, we're not just a satellite company; we're an entertainment company. We have a lot of original programming, and so it's a good company to be with. It really has a sense of entertainment and doing shows for people and original material. So we have a lot of original shows, and it's a great place to be. It's just it's very nurturing, and it's the kind of place I wish I had found when I was younger. I would have had an easier time in radio. I would have had more fun in radio instead, it was one battle after another.
That's right. When you left the Alex Bennett show here, you were back on, was it mornings for a very short time, and then you left for New York. Wasn't that right?
Well, actually, I went to Minneapolis, and then I did a talk show there, and then I went to Chicago and did a music show because I just needed a job, and then I got offered a talk show in New York. And then I stayed in New York for many, many years, for like 11 years. And then moved back to my hometown of San Francisco, where I was offered a morning show there, and stayed there for about 23 years before coming back here.
Now, that really rings a bell there because you played some music after you left the Alex Bennett show here. I remember you being on for a very short time, either mornings or afternoons, I remember whatever, but your unorthodox delivery was something that really struck me. I mean, there was no hype. You were just introducing the records. And I believe you played Come Back When You Grow Up Girl one time and said, boy, that's the last time I ever play that piece of junk.
Those are some of the things that would get me fired, yeah.
Yeah, it was, well, but it was quite groundbreaking for Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
And you remember after that, I believe it was in New York, didn't you interview Eric Clapton or John Lennon, some of those folks?
Oh, John Lennon, Eric Clapton, all of them. Yeah, yeah. I actually take credit, and I don't think anybody can dispute it. I was really the first person on a regular basis to interview rock musicians. No, but for some reason, nobody had done it. And when I called up a record company and said, you got any rock musicians that could come by to be interviewed, they went, why would you want to do that? And I went, well, because they'd be interesting to talk to. So I think the first one I ever had on was like Melanie. And then I started having people like Eric Clapton. And at that time, I mean, I think the first American interview ever in this country with Elton John was me.
Ah.
You know, so, I mean, it was, and I was doing something that everybody went, huh? Why are you interviewing these rock people? And it became a real thing. Now, of course, everybody does it. But in those days, nobody wanted to interview rock people. They figured they were just musicians, and that was it.
Well, you know, people are going to want me to ask you, what was Elton John like the first time? He wasn't used to all this media interview attention and everything. Was he kind of a shy guy?
No, I mean, he was just, I barely remember the interview. I mean, I remember it, but I barely remember what was contained in the interview.
Yeah.
I just remember that he came over here, and I don't even know if he had an album here yet. He still had he had one album on a label in England, and I just had him on, and I remember it, you know. And about years later, I met up with him again, and I said, you know, I was the first guy to interview you in the United States, and he didn't remember. So, you know.
How about John Lennon?
Lennon, it was more than an interview. I also knew John peripherally. I mean, we hung around the same crowd, and we would bump into each other now and then. I was more impressed with Yoko than I was with John, actually. I mean, you could have a really good discussion with Yoko. John was a little thick, a little slow. A lot of people find that amazing, but he was. He wasn't like you could sit around and have a deep intellectual discussion with him.
Yeah.
But he was a great artist,
yes.
and that's all he needed to be. And I think if you sometimes expect these people to be anything more than that, you're probably asking more of them than they have to give.
Well, sure. Did you ever meet McCartney?
No, never met McCartney. Met Harrison, met Ringo, and never met McCartney.
Harrison.
And you know something? I'm really glad about that.
Why?
I've never liked McCartney. My unfavorite Beatle. If I could excommunicate a Beatle, it would be McCartney.
Gee, so that means you'd rather meet Ringo than McCartney, huh?
You know, and Ringo was Ringo. Well, actually, I'll tell you a story. I mean, it's a weird, strange story, but the Paul McCartney rumor that he was dead surfaced on my show in New York, and the station said, if you can keep this going for another 3 nights, which I didn't really want to do, he said, we'll send you to England to go see if Paul McCartney is dead. So I said, sure, because I'd never been to Europe. So I stretched it along, and they sent me over to England. And I had gone 36 hours without sleep. And I'm interviewing Derek, what's his name? Derek, I forget his last name. He's the publicist for the Beatles. And he offers me some hash because they were smoking dope like crazy at Apple, all right?
Oh, yeah.
So I said, oh, okay. So I took it because it was almost a natural reflex in those days. Somebody hands you a pipe, you smoke it, you know? Derek Taylor was the guy's name.
Yes.
And so I took a puff of his hash. I didn't realize I'd gone 36 hours without sleep, and all of a sudden he says, "Oh, we heard Ringo's in the office. You can go interview him." And they sent me downstairs to interview Ringo, and I started interviewing Ringo, and I'm about halfway through the interview, and all of a sudden I can't remember the next question.
Yeah.
I am so stoned out of my mind between the tiredness and this hash that these people singing Hare Krishna all over the place. And I looked at Ringo, and I paused. I looked at Ringo, and I said, man, I'm wasted. And he looked at me and he said, you look it. And that's pretty much the interview. I've actually got that on tape somewhere.
Yeah, you look it. What was George like? Was he friendly?
George, I vaguely met George. I interviewed George once when he had released some kind of movie. He was a very nice guy, very affable.
Mm-hmm.
They're all basically at their by core. They were all kind of really working class guys. So they were really simple. None of them were really complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Or difficult.
Except maybe Bob Dylan or somebody.
Yeah, well, Dylan's another one that I've had over the years had an ongoing thing with. So.
Yeah, did you find him to be a little bit thick, or was he more cerebral?
Oh, Dylan is a. Listen, I think I've come to really appreciate him as a great artist, and I know a lot of what he went through. That recent video they turned out of him said a lot of things about him that I really resounded with me. But basically, he was a pain in the you-know-what.
Oh.
I mean, he most of his PR and his publicity and his history, a lot of it is manufactured by him, and is a deceit of sorts. The only thing that isn't a deceit is his performing. But things like the car crash, which was. It was a car crash, but it wasn't terrible. But he called friends all over the country, including a friend of mine who was his brother, and said, his brother's name I think was Dave Zimmerman. I knew him in Minneapolis.
Yes.
And just told him, look, you start this rumor, I'm in a coma. You start this rumor, I'm dead. You start this rumor, I'm doing this. And he loved playing that game with the public. Disrespected him for that.
He was so successful at it, though. I mean, I guess you have to.
He's very successful at it. Very successful at it.
Well, now, wasn't it later on that you were one of the early people who were bringing on comedians regularly? You had Seinfeld.
I did that in San Francisco,
Yes, later after New York, you went up to San Francisco.
And nobody thought of that one either. I mean, you'd think it was obvious.
Yeah.
Hey, comedians, they'd be good on a morning show, but nobody did that.
What would that have been? The 80s?
This was
70s.
first time I had a comedian on the air was in San Francisco in late 1979.
Who were some of the people you had on early on? Was Seinfeld one of them?
Name them. Name a comedian, and I'll probably say yes. Seinfeld, yes, absolutely.
Whoopi Goldberg, Penn and Teller.
Whoopi Goldberg was on my show quite a few times. Robin Williams, Roseanne was sitting in my audience one day when she was nothing, and I didn't even put her on the air because I said, how can this frumpy housewife be funny? She was broke and she was poor, so I used to take her out to lunch and make sure she could eat. But I'm saying virtually every comic of the time came through my doors at one time or another. And it was amazing. It's really amazing. I sit there watching TV now and go, know him.
Yeah.
And some of them more than passing acquaintances. Some of them very close friends.
They're good people. I mean, a lot of people think, they're on the road all the time. They must be on this kind of drug or that kind of drug. But most of them that I've met are good, decent folks.
So they're in the roughest profession in the world. You're standing up on a stage alone, and now a whole audience has got their arms folded, saying, "Make me laugh." And that's a difficult one, I mean, that's the only thing that would frighten me is having to go up and do a stand-up act. I appreciate anybody that does it.
Talking with Alex Bennett now, who has the program on Sirius. Now, you've been on Sirius for a while, and it's pure Alex Bennett. The thing to do about it is just make sure you get a Sirius radio, get Alex on the radio. And
what? Pay for radio? Yeah, paying for 120 channels of really great entertainment. Something like 65 channels of commercial-free music, and
yeah,
they give you Howard Stern for free, but they throw me in. Okay.
No, actually, we're paying for you, and Howard comes along as a bonus. It's value added.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for today's talk show hosts? I mean, is there anything you would want to say to some of these people?
Yeah, find real work.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. This is a business you have to be absolutely crazy to even want to be in. Because I'm lucky because I'm on satellite, and I think anybody who can get a job on satellite is very fortunate because we've got a freedom that very few people in broadcasting will ever know.
Mm-hmm.
But terrestrial radio today, not because of terrestrial radio's timidness, the fact the FCC, for instance, last week, the Senate, just upped the fine, where if you say a four-letter word, you could get fined $325,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cheaper if you're a corporation and cause fraud, for crying out loud. But the fact that they make guys like you have to sit there in fear that every minute you're walking on glass because you might say something that can be fined is I think horrible, and it's stifling to the creativity of terrestrial radio. I could never work terrestrial radio again. I'm too used to the freedom I have now. And using normal language that people use every day of the week. I'm riding on the subway and I hear people using this language. I mean, what world does the FCC live in that they think that people don't use these words?
Well, yeah. I mean, even some of the milder words, we have to think twice about using the word pissed off, or the words.
Yeah, and I just think that it's childish, okay, if nothing more. It shows a great immaturity on the part of our country that we would even think for a second to make these things fine. I mean, we're laughed at by almost every other country in the world about our morality that way.
Then again, the marketplace doesn't have any morals. So it goes where the money goes, you see. That's the whole deal.
No, that's exactly what I'm saying, though.
Mm-hmm.
That people are so upset by four-letter words, and they won't listen to a show if the show uses four-letter words. They won't watch it. If they don't watch it, they'll be off the air.
Yeah.
You and I know that. Let the market determine the morality. Don't let the FCC.
Yeah. Well, so your tip for the wannabe Rush Limbaugh or the wannabe Al Franken is get another job, go some other business where you can make some real money.
No, go into satellite.
Oh, okay.
Go into internet broadcasting. Go into all the places where you can have a concept and execute it without worrying or thinking twice about whether you're going to get a fine for it.
Yes.
Rather than terrestrial broadcasting, which is getting so stifled now, pretty much cotton candy is going to be the only thing you can discuss. And that's why I'm so happy with satellite. And forget satellite. There are other forms. There is such things as internet broadcasting, podcasting, a lot of other forms that free you up. And in television, there's always pay cable, and there's always the regular cable channels, which are a little more liberal than the over-the-air channels. But if you if you have a concept and you want to express yourself, try and stay away from the places that are regulated. It's just not as much fun, and it's not as satisfying. That's why I feel sorry for you working at a terrestrial radio. It's on terrestrial radio, and I remember this fervently. I lived every day of my life in fear I was going to lose my job, and I don't have that feeling at Sirius, and it's wonderful. There's very little I can do that will get me in trouble. I mean, yeah, I could if I wanted to, if I threatened somebody's life or something like that, I'm sure get into trouble. But given the normal things, and I use a normal language you and I would use if we weren't doing this show right now.
Yeah.
But I don't use it to shock. I use it because that's what the words people say these days.
Sure. I mean, that's the common language. Do you have any other memories you want to bring up about Houston?
I remember loving Houston. I just thought it was the greatest town. It was like a breath of fresh air in that part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it had to do with the fact that NASA had just come in, but it was clashing with the East Texas culture.
Yeah.
And so you had a combination of NASA scientists and at that time you had these beer lounges.
Yeah, we call them rednecks.
And with Buck Owens on the jukebox.
Sure.
And it was I thought it was just the greatest place in the world. I just loved it. There was all the there are few cities that I remember fondly. New York is one of them. San Francisco, my hometown, is another, and Houston is the other. I really, really loved Houston.
Yeah.
I'm not saying because I'm talking to you. It was one of those towns I just really enjoyed.
Yeah, coming into that old building, 500 Levitt Boulevard, and just getting on the air was probably a thrill.
God, yes. It was amazing. It was amazing working for Gordon McClendon and working in those days of broadcasting in that part of the world. I mean, I love the town, man. Outside of the fact that it was so humid you can't keep a crease in your pants, but, you know.
Well, that's still true, so there's nothing to worry about.
Yeah, the weather's never changed. Although with global warming, you should have a new ice age coming to Houston, Texas soon.
Yeah, we're hoping for that, too. That'll replace all the air conditioning, save us a bunch of money. Alex Bennett, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Anything you want to add?
No, just, you know, I mean, I don't want to take any listeners away from you because it sounds like you're having a nice time. But, you know, there is a thing called Sirius satellite radio, and, you know, I'm just doing my little part.
And a big part it is during your little part. I have to mention, by the way, too, that Jim Carolla gives you his best. He's with us here at the station.
Jim.
Yes.
Boy, there's a name I haven't heard for years. How's he?
Oh, he's doing great. Yeah, he does afternoons here with us. Jim Pruitt
really?
from Stevens and Pruitt, and Jim Carolla here. He gives you his best and just says to tell you.
Please send mine to him too.
I sure will.
Call sometime. You know.
Yeah, okay. I'll tell him to give you a call. He says to tell you namaste.
Oh, well, yeah. That was one of my old close sign-offs. Great talking with you.
It's great talking with you too. I hope we can talk again sometime soon. This is really great reminiscing with you a little bit.
Anytime.
Alex Bennett, thank you.